Today, I'm giving you the playbook, an approximate guide on how a high-conflict divorce usually goes down. It's not pretty, and it rarely ends as peacefully as we'd hope. But if you're about to face this kind of storm, at least you'll have a bit of a heads up. I'll take you through the stages, break down the psychological shifts, and give you a peek into what might happen when your once loving partner starts turning into, well, Mr. Hyde.
Now, a quick disclaimer. These stages aren't a neat step-by-step checklist that everyone follows in perfect order. It's more like a chaotic emotional buffet. Some people might jump straight into the revenge section without bothering to sample the denial hors d'oeuvres. Others might linger in bargaining for an eternity before moving on to the full-blown meltdown. So, while the order might vary and the specifics will definitely look different depending on who's involved, the general vibe is pretty much the same. It's a roller coaster from denial to rage to, wait, what just happened? And by the end, you're desperately holding on, just trying to survive, while the person trying to control or destroy you is up front, screaming, as if this whole nightmare is some twisted joyride. Now, I'm sure you've heard of the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. In divorce, we all go through some version of that to process and heal from a major loss. But when one or both parties is a high-conflict personality, that process gets hijacked. The ego jumps in, adds a few toxic ingredients to the mix, and suddenly, the stages are colliding. Denial becomes a strategic weapon, anger escalates into a campaign, and bargaining turns manipulative. Acceptance skips the show entirely. What should be a painful but natural progression becomes a cycle of chaos and control. Let's start with stage 1, denial. So you've made the decision to end things. You sit down, ready to talk it through, and they don't really get it at all. It's like you're speaking a foreign language. They may pretend it's no big deal, act like you're just going through a phase, or outright refuse to believe it's happening. Or it seems like they understand, but then they carefully avoid the subject for several months. You're dealing with someone who can't process the truth because it's too painful for them to accept. And you're sitting there wondering, has he heard me at all? Next comes bargaining, sometimes slipping in just before the explosion. Deep down, they know it's coming. Once anger takes over, there's no putting the chaos back in the box. So, in a last-ditch effort to keep the whole thing from blowing up, they pivot. Suddenly, it's flowers, love notes, and a flood of flattery. It can be confusing, even touching. And it's not always an act. Often, it's a desperate, genuine attempt to claw things back, to salvage something, to rewrite the ending, to regain control of a story that's already slipping away. They might suggest couples counseling, offer to change, promise things they've never even acknowledged before. While some of it might be sincere, there's often a parallel agenda humming underneath. They're trying to slow the train down, to regain some footing, some control. Not necessarily because they believe the marriage can be saved, but because they can't bear to watch it end without a fight. Or worse, without their say. And then the star of the show arrives: anger. This is where things turn properly ugly. After dragging their feet through denial and bargaining, the reality finally lands. But it doesn't come quietly. No, this is where the emotional explosion happens. It could start small, maybe a few passive-aggressive comments here and there. But it doesn't take long to escalate into full-on rage. You'll hear accusations, big ones. You never loved me. You used me. You're the reason everything is falling apart. And it doesn't stop there. When the mask slips, you start seeing a version of them you've never met before. It's all raw emotion. The anger is thick, like a storm that starts to consume everything in its path. Suddenly, you're no longer dealing with the person you married. You're face to face with a version of them that feels like a stranger. So what's going on here? Why the sudden anger? Well, this is where splitting comes into play. It's a psychological defense mechanism that kicks in when someone feels under threat. They divide the world into black and white. You're the bad guy, and they're the good guy.
They rewrite history, focusing on every little thing you did wrong and ignore everything they ever did. They might even convince themselves that they were a saint all along. And when this happens, there's no room for nuance. No gray area. Just them and you. Once they've split you into the villain role, things get worse. Now you're not just an ex, you're the enemy. And once they start seeing you as a villain, that opens the door for another fancy word: dehumanization. Suddenly, it's easier for them to justify treating you poorly, even cruelly. They don't see you as a person anymore. You're just an obstacle that needs to be removed. Now we hit the final stage, the pièce de résistance, revenge. In a normal process, this stage doesn't even show up, but for a high-conflict personality, it's the main act. This is where everything comes off: gloves, masks, even the pretense of civility. Now they want to hurt you. They want to get back at you, not because it's fair or just, but because it makes them feel powerful again. In their mind, you've taken away their life, their future, their sense of control. So they're going to take something from you, too. Expect legal threats, manipulation, and cold, calculated moves designed to drain your finances, stress you out, and drag you into endless court battles. If they can, they'll use the kids as pawns. They'll paint themselves as the victim and make you out to be the villain. You might find yourself questioning everything as they twist the narrative. They'll lie and manipulate the situation to make you feel small and powerless. It stops being about the relationship, or even the breakup. It becomes about winning at all cost. Hurting you becomes the mission, because your pain gives them something they're desperate for: a sense of control. As absurd as it sounds, that illusion of power starts to matter more than self-preservation. And they'll chase it, even if it means destroying themselves in the process. High-conflict personalities often get stuck in this cycle. They can't move on. They're too wrapped up in their anger and their need for revenge. It's like they've built an emotional prison and they're the only ones inside. And no matter how much time passes, they can't seem to get out. So what can we take away from all this? First, if you're dealing with a high-conflict divorce, it's not going to be easy. There will be emotional manipulation, financial abuse, and many, many lies. And although it will be very hard to resist, keep reminding yourself that you don't have to engage. You don't have to stoop to their level. You don't have to become Mr. Hyde yourself. Thanks for watching. If you've been through a high-conflict divorce or have thoughts on what we've discussed, drop a comment below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more videos like this. Take care, and see you next time.